I made them. In my first screencast, I created an HTML app for measuring meeting costs. And being a prototype that it was, I left some technical debt that I was gonna address in this screencast. So I mentioned that I usually use TypeScript, but I didn't do that in the prototype, so I'm gonna refactor my code now to use TypeScript instead. So TypeScript, for those that doesn't know what it is static typing for JavaScript. So a lot of the fumbling with the misspelling of the names and the variables could have been avoided if I had used TypeScript from the get-go. So in this screencast I'm gonna try to convert all my JavaScript to be using TypeScript, and I figured it's gonna take about 20 minutes or so. So let's get started. So this is my app. It works exactly as the last time. All I've done is get the JavaScript libraries from CDNs instead. So what I want to do now is use TypeScript, and what I usually do when I start up with plain JavaScript and want to convert it to TypeScript, I leave the working directory as it is. So we'll have app with the JS files that was originally there still intact, while I do TypeScript folder and try to match the functionality that's already there. So this is doable if you have a fairly small app, and you really should be using TypeScript early on in the project. So I've been using TypeScript since 0.8, and I think it's 0.95 now. So let's go ahead and add our first TypeScript file. So when we add the first file, it says that the project is being configured. So let's find the mappings, the definitions for the libraries that we use. And we are using jQuery. So we install that. I have jQuery Mobile. And Definitely Typed is a community-driven site that types the most common used libraries out there. And they are pretty up to date. Sometimes you have some mismatches, but usually they are good on updating to the latest versions. We want the Angular definition typing, and I think we should use Amplify. And in case somebody else hasn't already typed it, you can easily type it yourself. So, but all the libraries I've used are already typed, so why not use them? So what we got here is the typings now for the different libraries, and I think it's pretty common practice to add a TypeScript file that references all the files, so you don't need to include all the specific ones you're using in each TypeScript file. So I'm going to create an _all and add all my libraries that I'm using. And I'll also add my own TypeScript files here. And in main, we simply just reference all and create our module. Meter. So now I can start looking at my JavaScript files and try to write them as TypeScript files instead. And since TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript, this should be really simple, but I've struggled with it before, so I'm gonna have my fingers crossed that this goes without any hassle. So let's add use strict. And now we can see that we can only write the things that are typed. If I would to use a function that isn't defined, we get errors. So this is sweet. So this is our module definition, and that shouldn't be anything more for now. So let's convert a directive. We add a new TypeScript file. Copy paste. We can start by copy pasting the whole function. So what you want to do is export a function and yeah, we're not using old value there. Let's write a lambda instead, new value. Now TypeScript seems to think that this is not assigned in an execution path, but we know that it is, so we're going to ignore that. Alright, and now instead of registering it in the directives file, I think I'm gonna do this in main instead. So let's use TypeScript here, not factory, directive. We get nice auto completion, and what was it called? Slider in it. Slider in directive. So now we can navigate. Alright, so I think we're satisfied with the directives. And I'm gonna do the controller last because I think it's the most work. So I'm gonna address the storage service, which is actually a factory right now. And I'm gonna do this a real service. So the difference between services and factory in Angular is basically that in this factory we register some methods on an object and return the object instead of writing the functions directly on the class. And services in Angular are also treated as singletons, which factories aren't. So I'm gonna make this a service instead. Storage service. Let's copy paste some code. Add it to all. Alright, so let's copy paste this into a TypeScript file. And rewrite it as a class. So export class storage service. Let's get rid of that object and define it as methods on this class instead. Right, so this should be valid TypeScript now. Let's see what it's complaining about. Alright. And then we just register it on our app. Oh, I edited the wrong file. Copy paste this to storage service, revert our changes here. Alright. let's add our controller as well. Copy paste this file. Alright, so let's take this entire function and copy paste it. So this won't be as smooth as the other files, but let's just get started with it. So export class meeting controller. And this will be parameters to our constructor. Now let's actually use TypeScript for this to get help by IntelliSense with what we can do. So this is an iScope. This is I think it's called timeout service. Yeah. In a storage service, we don't actually have an interface for that yet, but we'll create one later. Let's not address that yet. Alright, so just to see that everything's working, we can just copy paste this into a constructor. So bear with me, this is not how it's gonna look at the end, hopefully. Okay, so now we get some errors here saying that people does not exist on the iScope. So what you need to do is define your own interface that extends this scope, but we'll do that later as well, just to get things up and running. Okay, so this doesn't look very good yet, but we'll get there. Now in our default HTML, let's use our new file instead. Let's cross our fingers that this works. It seems to work. Oh yeah, I forgot one thing. So this works because we haven't used the minified files. What we need to do now, when we don't define our dependencies here when registering it, we're gonna go and define an inject method on our controller, because these variable names will become like N and G or S or something when minified, and the injector in Angular won't actually know what to inject there. So we're gonna need to define a static variable called inject that defines this exact area here. So now it will work minified as well. Okay, so it still works. No? Inject public static. So let's do the min Angular because the error messages becomes unclear. Okay, so meeting control is not a function. Do we get that before? Okay, so let's do this in the right order. No. So we got that just because we added inject. I didn't think so. Right. So what are we getting here? So we got our meeting controller. Got our main JS. Alright. So I don't know if we hit some cache earlier, but we obviously forgot to register controller here. Meeting controller. So that's one thing that I always do when I'm developing. I try to use the full Angular file because the error messages just get so confusing. Alright, so we're up and working again. Okay, so a couple of things I think of here is that the storage service have a settings file and has some methods that aren't really defined anywhere. So I want this settings, this data structure, to be explicitly typed somewhere. So we're gonna add a new TypeScript file called models, and if I have a lot of models, I'll create a models folder and then put the different classes in each in a separate TypeScript file, but I'm thinking we're not gonna have that many models right now, so I'll just put them in one big file. It's just gonna be one class here for now. So let's include that there, and also add it to our default page. So one thing that they changed for TypeScript in Visual Studio 2013 is that we can't see the JavaScript files here anymore. They are there in the background, but they are not included in the project. So we'll get this link errors here, thinks that it's not a part of the project. I mean, it's kind of annoying, but hey, what do I know? So I could go ahead and include these, but let's leave it as they want us to use this tool. And now in models, let's create a class called settings model. I want this to be public and equals people. There should be a number, and we have average salary. Oops, should be a number as well. Constructor. Alright, and now in our storage service, we can say that this actually returns a settings inclusion to models, yeah. settings model. So if we try to return anything else than a settings model here, we should get a TypeScript error. So we do that. Okay, so it didn't recognize that. Too bad. Alright. And here, let's say you need to pass in this kind of model here. That's what we store. Now let's see if it gets that. Alright, we haven't typed the interface here. Okay, so we're gonna do one more thing. This storage service, I want it to implement a strict interface. So let's create a folder called interfaces. Let's apply storage interface. Once again, we copy paste some code. We want to add this to all. Like to have a clean distinction between my interfaces, my libraries, and my other TypeScript files. If I divided them into features, I like to group them into features as well. So yeah, and this one should go one step up before including all. Alright, so here I want to export an interface. Get and save settings. Oh. Right, so now if I say that this class implements that interface, and if I don't implement that, now I should really get an error. Yeah. So it's missing the get settings that we say should be defined on this class. And now we can go to our controller and say that this is of type storage service. If we try to use anything that isn't typed on that interface, we'll get compile time errors. So this way we don't fumble with typos like I did in the first screencast as much. If we do this work by defining all the methods. Alright, so I got a storage interface. So now if I try to pass something else here, should get an error as well, because this doesn't fulfill the interface requirements. I can do something like this instead. It's either way actually, but I think it's more object oriented. I'm a C# guy and I like to write it as it were C#. Alright, so now we got all these things defined on the constructor, and that's not very C-sharpy, so I want to get rid of that as well. So we can start by moving save settings outside the constructor, define it as a function instead. It will be defined on the prototype for this object. And now I must use this here and add this as well. This scope setter, format this. Okay, the property store setter does not exist on the. Okay, it could be that. Let's write this as a lambda instead. Save settings, storage service. Alright, okay, so I haven't added private keyword. Sweet. What else can we do? So we're watching these and invoking save settings, sure. Cal cost could be moved out, and all these as well. So let's do a big bang refactoring here and hope that everything still works. So define it the TypeScript way. I'll just say any for now. Define tick. Let's just add this everywhere. Oh yeah. Okay, so this is, so you can't just go this everywhere because we need to actually know what this is referring to. So let's do self here instead. This cancel promise should be this, and then in this method and cal cost will actually be in that scope. Cal cost. Okay, so we got a lot of errors here, but I think we're gonna be fine if we just struggle through it. So here I actually know that something's gonna break in the binding, but we'll get to that in a sec. Right. The last one. Okay, so now it looks a bit cleaner, but as I said, oh, what is it complaining about? Really? Oh yeah. Alright, so now the buttons shouldn't actually work, so that would be expected not to work because they aren't defined on the scope. So I've seen a couple of ways to get around this or solve this. You can define them here as lambdas and invoke the actual methods, but what I usually do, I don't know if it's the cleanest way to do it, but I'll define a property called VM, which refers to this, and then in my HTML page I bind to VM. So if you're screaming at the screen right now telling me not to do this, but I think I'm gonna go with this for now. Okay, so I know there's a couple of ways to address this, but now we should have a working prototype again. Yeah. Everything works as expected. Sweet. Alright, and there's actually one more thing I'd like to do. We've defined the scope as any here. I'd like to actually strictly define what should be available on the scope. So let's put an interface in this. same file for now, and I'll move it out later. So meeting scope, and let's say it's of that type. And so now we got a lot of errors here, and we want this to extends, yeah, the NGI scope. Right, okay. Now we'll just define the properties that we know that we want to be available on the interface. So people should be a number, right? Average salary. We should see these errors go away, yeah. We'll add running and cost. Running should be a boolean. Cost should be a number. So future refactorings should be a lot easier, and we shouldn't be afraid of breaking anything after this meeting controller. Alright, then let's put this in its own file, TypeScript file, meeting scope. To all. Yeah, one step up. Okay, so does this one seem to be some kind of, let me just take the arrow just, okay, close it up. Yeah, looks good. Okay, so I'm feeling pretty satisfied with what I've done. So let's create a bundle and minify this and see if it still works, because a lot of times I thought that things work, and then when actually minifying it I get into all sorts of trouble. Let's copy this bundle file. We'll add this to the bottom. And I think we created one more file, right? It's the models, yeah. Also, we're calling it, let's get rid of this app folder and rename our TS folder. We only have relative paths here, so we should be good. And models, directories, media controller, storage service main, yeah. Also, we should have some errors here now because TS doesn't exist. Let's just do a sanity check here to see if everything still works after renaming the folder. Still works, and let's use a minified version instead. Let's be sure that it's actually rebuilt. Yeah, so we can see that this is the JavaScript that TypeScript has compiled for us. Yeah, we got our inject method there. Right. So let's cross our fingers and hope that everything still works. Yeah, it still works. So we haven't actually added any functionality in this screencast, but we will be a lot more comfortable with refactoring and growing this app into something more useful in the future. So I'll commit this after the screencast. So that's it for now. Hope you guys enjoy this, and we'll see what we'll address in our next screencast. I'm thinking server-side functionality, or perhaps some other feature. I saw that a ticket just came in on GitHub. It's from my colleague. He sits right beside me as I'm recording this, actually. So until next time, have a nice day. Bye.